Hello, everyone. My name is Alissa Ramos, and I am the Academic Learning Center Coordinator, as well as a psychology instructor here at SDSU Imperial Valley. I teach Chicano psychology, and for Pride Month, the Cross Cultural Center has asked me to please talk about the queer community and the perspective of the queer community from a Chicanx perspective and what research exists. So I will present that today. Okay, so the first thing we need to talk about is what research actually exists, first of all, within the queer community, about the queer community. And to be honest, the research is not where it should be. As we know, a lot of the research in psychology was mostly done for many, many years on white males, probably specifically straight. And it isn't until recently that we've actually seen more research done on the queer community. However, if we break it down even further, very little research has been done specifically on Latinx community and even less on Chicanx community. So just know that the research still needs a lot of work. It's definitely going in the right direction, but we're not where we should be. So let's talk about sort of from a context more larger, so from a Latinx, Latina perspective about how gays and lesbians might come out. So often there will be a difference in how a gay male and a lesbian may come out. And this may be also a generational thing. A lot of people, depending on your generation, saw the idea of coming out very, very differently, or if it would even be a possibility. So older generation, you might know that they didn't come out, that they were just the way they were, and it was never spoken about. Excuse me. However, as newer generations are progressing in their identity, you see that the way people come out varies. Sometimes for the Latinx community, coming out isn't a one-time event. It takes many, many processes. It's a lifelong process because for some individuals in this community, they might feel comfortable coming out to certain people, and they might not feel comfortable coming out to other people at all. And for some, it might take a process to come out to others. So unfortunately, for some individuals, coming out might not be an all-inclusive thing. It might be that certain people in their life get to see that part of them, and certain people don't. And that might be for a number of reasons. For their safety, for fear of being rejected, for the fear of no longer having that community. So it could be a lifelong process. So as mentioned, the possibility of coming out is going to depend on their family, their friends, their coworkers, their community. And for many individuals from this community, coming out could be considered a cultural suicide. Why? Because if they come out to people in their community that are not accepting of that life, of who they are, then they are probably going to be shunned from that community. Or at the very least, are going to be told not to talk about their identity to the community because it is seen as either sinful or not acceptable by the community. Now, I'm not saying the entire Latino community is way, but we definitely see silos of this, especially more conservative silos. So another situation within the queer community, in the Latino community, is that sexual identity or identity of self and formation of that identity, it has a lot of conflict. And why does it have a lot of conflict? Because in the Latino community, we need to understand that there is very much a patriot type of perspective. In other words, there is still a heterosexual normity on how you are supposed to view the roles of a male, a female, etc. And so if you don't follow those roles, you are shunned, because then there is something wrong with you, and therefore there is something wrong with that family, and therefore there is something wrong with that community. And so if an individual who knows their identity is gay or is queer, and they're constantly giving this message that they must be a certain way, if not, there's something wrong with them, then this individual might feel ashamed to go against what the group might believe in. Because remember, in a Latinx community, we're more of a collectivistic society rather than an individualistic society. And so therefore, if that is the case, we care more about what the group needs rather than what the individual needs. And so there is a constant battle within an individual on whether or not they will go against their cultural norm. Another situation that you see a lot in the Latino community is this emphasis on reproduction and parenting. It is very big to constantly be bombarded with this idea that you need to reproduce, you need to have kids, you need to be parents. And if you don't follow that norm, there must be something wrong with you. And this is regardless if you are from a queer community or a straight community. That is something that is pushed quite a bit. And if you don't have these things, and if you don't follow these things, you are viewed as there's something wrong. The other situation that a queer individual might come across in the family dynamic is el que dirán. So what will people say if an individual does come out and feels comfortable being who they are? And this is very big because, once again, we go back to this idea of a collectivistic society and caring more about what the group needs are rather than what the individual needs are. So what happens with individuals within the gay, lesbian, the queer community in total? A lot of times they feel they need to choose between their cultural community and their identity or sexual community. And so in some cases, individuals live a double life. Coming out can jeopardize the individual's place in their family and their community. And so in many cases, these individuals live two lives. They live one life with their family, and then they live one life as a queer individual. So they're juggling these two spaces in order to keep, quote unquote, the peace. So Morales came up with this model for sexual identity formation among Latino gay and lesbians. And this can be looked at from other perspectives as well. But this is specifically for the queer Latino community. And so the first, when an individual is starting to understand their queerness and who they are and whatnot, the first state might be denial. And the reason why they deny it is because, remember, they grew up in a very specific way of heterosexual norms. They grew up with el que dirán, and they grew up with this pressure of reproduction and of being a parent. And so first is denial, because you don't want to put your family down, right? You don't want to bring shame to your family. And so there is a lot of denial at the beginning that they don't want to be a part of this community. They don't want anything a part of this community. They want to be whatever their society has said is the quote unquote norm. The second stage is a conflict between identifying if they are bisexual versus if they are gay, lesbian, or any other identity. And the reason why there is this conflict is because with if you state first that you are bisexual, it's almost this idea that you're not completely destroying the beliefs of that heterosexual norm of reproducing and being a parent. And so by being bisexual, you are almost giving your family or your community still hope that that is a possibility. And so a lot of queer individuals will start off by saying they are bisexual before they transition to their identity. And that's just because they still want to hold on to that belief of the heterosexual norm. Then the third stage is they have a conflict of allegiance. And so now they have an issue with cultural and sexual community. Who do they align with? Do they align with the culture and the family that they grew up with? Or do they align with this sexual identity community that they align with? And that's difficult, especially because maybe the cultural community, their family, does not accept this identity. And so there is now a push and pull on this individual and where they stand. The fourth stage is established priority of allegiance. So at this point, they know where they stand, they know who they are, they know what they believe in and how to process that. And so they start understanding maybe that their allegiance might be more towards one community or the other. And that is their priority. That is for no one to judge. That is how they feel more comfortable with. And all an individual can do is just support them with their decision and just be there for them. And so this individual will figure out what their priority of allegiance is, whether that be to their community or that be to their sexual or their identity as a whole. And then finally, the final stage is when an individual can now start integrating various communities together. And this is where they might get to a point in which they're comfortable where they are with their allegiance, whether being completely aligned just to one side or completely aligned to the other side, or maybe they're in a happy medium, or maybe one is more than the other. But now at that point, they're able to navigate and integrate various communities that they feel are safe haven for them and able to understand how to navigate that and why they're navigating those communities. And now we get into, of course, transgender and the Latinx community. And as you can imagine, and as I've said before, there isn't a lot of studies in general on Latino queer community, and you can probably guess that there's even less on the transgender community. I mean, as a whole transgender community, there is almost no research. So you can just imagine what it might be like for maybe the Latinx community. So the things that we do know about the Latinx gender community and the research that was focused on them is this transgender Latinas report higher levels of depression, substance abuse, HIV, risky behaviors, etc. And this might go back to the fact of, them having to choose between their cultural community and their identity and not having that support from family or from friends. That can have a really, really deep impact on someone. And so that might be a possible theory, all right, why this can go up. It's not the only theory, but it is a theory that exists. The next theory that exists is that there are more barriers in general for transgender people to obtain healthcare and substance abuse treatment and housing and social and mental health services, but it increases even further if you have the added label of a person of color. So as is, it's hard for a white transgender person. It's even harder for a colored transgender person. And finally, sexual violence. And of course, we know that sexual violence exists among just in general, Chicanas experience higher rates of sexual violence, and males also experience some sort of situation. So just know that this is something that even in the queer community, it happens. And it should not be taken lightly. Unfortunately, reports are not that high. And there's a number of reasons why people might not report, fear of law enforcement, fear of el que dirán, fear of how the family might treat you, etc. So that is my lecture. Happy Pride Month. Please, if you need any support of any sort, my office is always open. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of the month. Thank you so much.